All right. I thank you all for coming out tonight and attending the webinar from the comfort of your own home. We're going to be doing this one on redfish tips and tactics, professional redfish tips and tactics 2.0. 1.0, it went very well, had a few technical difficulties. So we're going to kind of be covering a little bit of the same thing as we're talking about what we're doing for this weekend's tournament down here in Jacksonville, Florida for the IFA Redfish Tour. And we're going to leave a larger amount of time for a question and answers portion to make sure we get all those questions answered and make sure you get everything you want out of this webinar. This webinar is presented by the nice folks over at Blue Wave Boats. Best boat in the industry, in my opinion, in its class. Ride the wave, rule the bay. That was corny. Okay. Again, thank the guys at Blue Wave Boats for getting the message out there about this webinar. I'm sure a few of you, at least if not a good portion of you, found out about this webinar through Blue Wave's efforts of putting the message out there, and I appreciate that. Appreciate those guys. I am Captain Stephen Fields. I am a professional saltwater guide and redfish tournament angler. I spend all my time on the water, and if I'm off the water, I'm talking fishing. So I eat, sleep. I love it. It's what I grew up doing. It's what I'm going to go out doing. It's just how my daddy raised me. I'm based out of Charleston, South Carolina. My charter fishing company is Charleston Fishing Company, Charter Fishing and Tours. Definitely feel free to check it out at charlestonfishingcompany.com. And my professional angler website, fieldsfishing.com. That'll kind of keep you updated, tournament schedule, what I'm doing, what appearances I'm making. I definitely got to update that schedule. But that's me. My guest tonight, my tournament partner on the Redfish Tour, Captain Jeff Crumpton. I'll let him tell a little bit about himself.
Good afternoon or evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jeff Crumpton. Been a guide since '92. Been guiding here in Florida for about 17 years, 14 years here in Amelia Island, Florida, Fernandina Beach. Full-time guide, love to fly fish, love sharing information, and helping others enjoy the outdoors. If you'd like to visit this area, Amelia Island, Fernandina Beach, please give me a call, or you can visit my website at jeffcrumpton.com. I look forward to having a great evening with you all.
All right. Kind of what we're going to be going over here again. I'm going to leave a large portion at the end for questions and answers. And we're going to be covering kind of topics about, covering water to find redfish, fishing docks, setting up for success, and then we're going to have that long Q&A. We're also going to kind of be just spitballing dock talking between myself and Jeff here, kind of about what we're doing pre-fishing or practicing, trying to find some fish for this weekend's tournament on the IFA Redfish Tour here in Jacksonville, Florida. Just, real life situations. I mean, we're really looking for fish, try to make some money. So, just real life situations and what we're doing, and hopefully that can help some people out there. And I'm sure some of your questions at the end are kind of help us put everything in perspective and answer some stuff I might not have put in the webinar to begin with. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Covering new water, being open to fish new water. One of the big things is using what you or I already know and applying your knowledge to new areas. I know a lot of times going into a new area, looking at my charts, which I use heavily, whether it be the boating app I have on my iPad or the web app at navionics.com, or even on my Ray Marine chart plotter with my Platinum card or Navionics Plus or Regions card. I have plenty of time ahead of time to do a lot of homework, and I know what works in certain areas, and Charleston, South Carolina is very similar to most areas of the Fernandina Beach, Jacksonville, absolutely. Florida area. So I can use a lot of the knowledge I already have about some of the areas that work in in my neck of the woods and the situations that lead to those spots working, the details, the contours, how the fish react to certain baits, to certain cover, to tides, all that's pretty similar down here. And that really helps me eliminate and also find a lot of quality water. This is Jeff's area down here, so he's a little bit closer to fishing in some of these areas than me. I know he does his homework, and I know he compares a lot of spots, and that helps him a lot to find a lot of areas that are hot. But he might be running a lot of charters or something and not be able to hit a specific area until the week before the tournament. So he uses a lot of prior knowledge to go into how he might set up certain areas.
Absolutely.
You know, tell him a little about that.
Yeah, this last few weeks, we've had some really windy days. Needed the rain. That was great. But having the rain also flushes the salinity level out a little bit, the sweet water. If we don't have a lot of rain, I feel a lot of times fish will move upriver and transition what we call sweet water. It's just a happy salinity level that they like, and maybe the bait's there. Bait's a real important part of finding fish, any type of fish. So it was nice to see some rain. Saves me a lot of runs, long runs upriver sometimes to find fish where they're transitioning, moving back down the rivers and stuff. Also, I look for points, main points, pocket water, little, what I like to call a highway, or maybe creeks, little feet. When I say a creek, it might only be 2 foot wide and run up in an area up on a flat, what we call a flat, a shallow area, maybe 100 yards, 200 yards, and then just kind of pan out to what we call a flood tide flat with very short spartina type grass. Those to me are called a highway. Fish can move up on there if it's a flood tide. We just came off a full moon. They're not quite tailing here. I haven't seen any tailing fish, but as far as reds, but I've been seeing a lot of sheephead and stuff. I know it's getting into springtime. Our water temperature was around 65, 67 degrees. I did not check the temperature today or the last few days, but I know the temperature has dropped a little bit. The fishing's been great. There's reds everywhere, a lot of fish, but we also are in a transition period where your bull reds and stuff might be moving out towards the ocean side this time of year. But as far as the fishing goes and learning an area, I stick with what works. Over the years, you being on the water a lot, you'll start finding a pattern on fish being where they like to stage on the low tide, stage on the higher tides, and how they move on and off the flats. And if I'm not finding fish in certain areas, I like to explore new water, but sometimes, I have trouble finding fish in new waters, or maybe they're not there, and I'm trying to figure out why aren't they there? Or maybe I'm there at the wrong time of the tide. They could be there. And that's just spending time on the water. And I like to get on my trolling motor or push pole and just ease along the flat as slow as possible, ASAP. It's not as soon as possible, but move as slow as possible. And a lot of times I'll just stake out and observe a whole tide cycle in one area. If I've got an 8-foot hole, I'm up in 3 foot of water at high tide. We have about a 7-foot tide change, 6.5 on average. And when I see a pothole, I might stake out and sit in that hole and watch all the water drain off the flat, see if I see fish moving. If it's a windy day, I'm not going to see as many fish, but if it's not real windy, you can watch the different currents of the movement of the currents. And I'll watch the wind. If it's blowing the current from left to right, and all of a sudden I see something moving right to left, it gets my attention, and I'll observe that and try. If I can see through the water, the actual fish, that's great. But sometimes I can tell where the fish are at by the way the current moves.
Yeah, just sitting and watching. Sometimes leave the rod at home. You can really observe how fish are moving on and off the flat, and that's just as important. You don't want to get behind these fish. You want to stay one step ahead of them. that's going to prevent spooking them, but give you the best opportunity to naturally present a bait to them. And going back to when I was talking about, use what you already know. I know in Charleston, the fish have really been keying on the low incoming tide bite once the tide reaches up into the oysters or getting close to getting into the grass. That's just when the fish have become more comfortable. I guess they're able to be more comfortable around the structure that is now being covered with water. And that's kind of when the bites turned on. And I know when I came down here, that's the first thing Jeff was saying is that's the way it's been down here too. So that's just something, applying the knowledge you already know to new areas. A lot of things are very similar, and that's kind of helping us key in on the when and where for some of these fish.
I think also the fish are moving up there because it's a little bit warmer water, and it's heating up the flat. And they might not necessarily be moving up there to eat, but they are eating. At least that's the bite. Normally, my favorite bite's the last 3 hours of the fall and first hour or two of the incoming. But here lately, it's been the last of the falling and first 3 hours of the income, like you said. When it hits the grass or the edge of the oysters, start covering over the oysters, the bite's been turning on good.
Yeah, and we're getting into situations here. Watercolor and clarity. I know that's the first thing that we started talking about when I came down here. There's a lot of dirty areas, but there's also
some
clean water too. And, that can be the difference between a good bite and a bad bite. And I'm thankful that Jeff's done his homework and got us on some clean water. Weather, windy, calm, overcast, or bluebird, sunny skies. If you got a tournament, you might as well bet it's going to be the windy and overcast, some adverse conditions, and evidently a little chilly this weekend. And that all has an effect on the bite too, and you can take that into account. And a lot of that goes back to prior knowledge too. I do a lot of fishing logs. I've been doing them for quite some time. And, just keeping track of when I've had successful days and even the bad days. The bad days can be just as important as keeping track of and writing down, what did you do on that bad day, or what did you do on that good day? What did you have success with? What was the barometric pressure that day?
That's real.
What was the tide? What was the tidal movement? Water, temperature, clarity, all that, etc. Tides, current movement, current strength. What bait was around, the structure you were fishing, the current breaks, points, humps, holes. These are all kinds of, situation conditions you can run into. And again, eliminating water is just as important as finding good water. To me, you want to fish as slow as possible in all these areas to to do your homework and get the gist of what's going on. But you also do want to have a lot of spots that you pick out doing your homework, and if you get a lot of those spots, 10% of them are going to pay off. 90% of them aren't. There's no doubt about it. 10%, 90% of the fish live in 10% of the water. That's what my daddy always used to say.
That's right.
And so, I collect a number of those spots just doing my homework, looking at my charts, which you can see there, looking for those current breaks, structure, bait, points, humps, and holes. Fish love current, but they like it because it brings bait to them. But they also like something to create a current break, whether that be a point, hump, hole, or some sort of structure that they can get themselves out of the current and easily just hop out and grab whatever's coming by. It's kind of like us sitting in our recliner as men, and for you ladies out there, and for somebody to bring us a bag of Doritos instead of us having to get out of our chair, walk all the way to the kitchen and get the Doritos. It's nice when those Doritos just kind of float by. It's an easy meal, and bottom feeder.
That's why their mouth is down.
That's why their mouth is down.
90.
But man, when they eat, they are grouchy. They are grouchy. They get mad when you pull them out of that recliner. Working the water column, that's just as important. And I have caught myself being complacent with this many of times. I still do it sometimes. You have the surface, you have the middle, and you have the bottom of the water column. Believe it or not, I don't care if you're fishing in 2 foot of water.
There's a surface.
There's a surface, bottom, middle, and bottom. If you're and I do this all the time. I mess up all the time doing this. There's many a times I should have, put on a heavier weight or put on a lighter weight. That can, especially when you're sight fishing fish, they're just not eating. Man, that bait was probably 6 inches above his head or 6 inches too low.
Or splashed in, hit the water too hard, and you usually if you see the fish, you're going to see him swim off.
But I know for a fact that's cost me money and probably made a few unhappy clients at times due to bad recommendations.
Made other anglers a lot of money.
And made other anglers a lot of money. I'm helping everybody else out. You can come and whoop me on this half the time.
Were you there?
Yeah. All right, hold on a second. There we go. Okay, we're good. But that's definitely important.
Well, you also got to think about the thermocline. It doesn't matter the depth of the water usually, but you're going to have a slight thermocline, temperature change in those columns too. And I find in the wintertime that reds like a certain temperature. If I've had 52-degree water temperature and I can find a water that's 55, 56, or 2-3 degree difference, that's usually where I'm going to find those fish congregating together, especially from winter mode to early spring, which we thought we were in summer mode, but this week we've been thrown back into winter mode.
Yep.
The fish have been shallow, the ones I've been seeing, but they're also holding on trough lines where the breaks are, not so much like way up in the grass. They're just getting that, and I've noticed the temperature in those areas when I checked the temperature was like, I'm in 57, 58 degree temperature. I see 62 degrees there. That's where the fish are hanging. And then in the summer months, we're talking about structure, which is anything beneath the surface. We also have a cover, which would be something above the surface, whether it be a overhanging tree providing shade for change of water temperature, or docks that has a little bit of shade. I know in the dog days of summer here, the fish will get more around docks and stuff too under the cover.
Definitely. There are a lot of like largemouth when it comes to that. But different baits, you can use to cover different parts of the water column, heavier jig head or a heavier weighted swim bait hook, or a lighter weight, just a flipping hook with a heavier bait on it.
What was it, 2 weeks ago? You're catching all the reds. As I was looking back, and you said, "What size weight do you have?" I said, 1/8 ounce or 1/4 ounce. And you're like, "Oh, I'm weightless."
Yeah, I just had a heavier soft plastic on a weightless VMC flipping hook, and not really dead sticking it, but just giving it a more subtle presentation of it floating down, let it sit, and then just slowly move it here and there, just working as slow as possible. Again, there's that ASAP. I need to start making T-shirts. Who wants to buy one? But that was the ticket there. And, there's also a lot of baits you can work all the every bit of the water column, like suspended twitch baits or rattle traps or suspended crankbaits, top waters. Spinner baits. I don't know if I already mentioned that, but jerk shads. You can kind of work all the parts of the water column all at one time with that one bait. Just slow down or speed up your retrieve. Those are all pretty keys to what we're doing, and that's something that I'm sure as we get into this tournament that I'll look for in how the fish react to it, and what we need to do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. What is this page called? Dissecting. All right. Differences, current breaks, feeder creeks, oysters, boat lifts, blowouts, holds water at all tides. These are all important parts of dissecting docks. Docks can be crazy little things. Again, it's something you definitely want to do your homework on and look at your charts. As you can see in the bottom right-hand corner down here, there's a chart off the Navionics web app down there, and there's a couple of docks right here. And you can notice that one or two of the docks here are hanging out in deeper water. And, it's on all charts, all the tides that are, all the the water levels that are shown on the charts is your average low tide. So this is what your average low tide is going to look like for a particular area. I'm not going to tell you where because it is a good spot. So this is what you want to look for.
That spot. Grandma.
This is what you. Hopefully nobody in Charleston is watching this webinar. But looking for docks. The first thing I do on looking at my charts, I don't care what you're using, a paper chart, the web app, your boating app, or on your chart plotter. I use all those together. And I'm looking for docks that are going to hold water at all tides. And that includes like a low, especially a negative low. That's going to be the docks that are going to hold your fish. Looking for something different. What's different about these docks? Is there a feeder creek? Is there oysters? Your satellite maps can show you that. If there's an oyster or if it's an older dock. Depth changes. Are there some deeper holes on it? And, that can be all important aspects of finding docks. And again, I'm going to get a collection of docks, 10, 20, whatever that have these good looking features on them. Thank you, Jeff. And, like I said, 90% of the fish live in 10% of the water. So a lot of these docks aren't going to have anything on them, whether it be just that day or, well, there's just not fish there. And, but if you get a collection of some good spots, I guarantee you some of them are going to pay out, and you're going to learn a lot of things for why they paid off. And you definitely want to work these docks effectively too. I mean, they can all be sitting on one piling or facing a certain direction with the current movement. There's around every post, there's always a little blowout where the post was driven down into the water, and just from due to natural tide movement, it washes out a lot of sediment from the bottom around these posts. So they can sit tight and right on these posts or not sit off of them. So you definitely want to pick them apart to the best of your ability. Soft plastics are usually the way to go with this. But a spinnerbait running it through a dock can be effective as well. Jeff, you want to throw in here?
Yeah, I was looking at your chart down here with the water depth, just kind of give you guys an example of the contour lines, the 10-foot, was that a 5-foot zone, 2 foot on the 2 middle docks. And then it shows the white means there's water there all the time.
That's it.
And the blue shows that there's water there. That's usually your 1 foot areas. And then the green, it means it's dry at low tide, generally, not always, but generally. And at higher tide, that's going to be underwater as well.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Just kind of give you guys an idea is what I want to share with you all about reading the charts. And stuff.
The key to the charts, and I appreciate you bringing that up, Jeff. Teamwork right here.
That's right.
But finding these, it's good to see this to find the docks that are going to hold water at all tides. But as you know, with the tidal movements, you're going to be able to fish the whole dock as the tide comes up. And you can, usually falling water or low incoming is really good for docks. But I've caught them in the flooded grass next to docks at high tide. So, you definitely want to be there to check out all tides at these docks as well. Kind of the way you can tell we love docks, and we're positioning on a lot of docks this week. But the way I like to set up for docks, positioning or anchoring up with our, the key is, getting your power pole anchors and throwing them things down. It makes fishing docks or structure, oyster bars, whatever you're fishing, a lot easier. My goodness.
Thank you, Mr. Oliveri.
I don't know what my dad did before them things. Either I'm lazy, but I love it.
We're holding the boat back with the push pole. Like, oh no, I got.
And you can call me Picasso on this picture. This is my artwork here. The blue square, that is my nice 2400 Blue Wave Pure Bay boat. I mean, that it pretty much just looks just like it. The red arrow is the tidal movement, and the little the odd looking red dots, that's going to be your fish positioning. But let's say the tide is moving from left to right on both of these, and yes, I do have one position with my boat sitting with the tide coming to my face. That situation, that's B. That situation is going to be where the fish might be staging a little bit downward of the pilings, not holding as close to the pilings, but sitting, drafting pretty much. like NASCAR type
Suspended.
stuff. Yeah, suspended off the pilings on the down current side. Sometimes you want to stay off that behind the fish, pitch up way under the dock, and let the bait naturally drift down to the fish. That seems to be the ticket when they're sitting like that.
Oh yeah, but also the reason they might be sitting like that is because the pilings and obstruction, and immediately behind it, beyond the obstruction, is what we call an eddy.
Yes,
where you have swirling water.
A little bit of
not much. It could be a big eddy or a small eddy, but it's slower moving water, and they're staging right in that little comfort zone when they see that bait just has a moment. It might be a 2-second or 3-second moment where it kind of pauses and swirls a little bit, and those fish will come in and ambush off of it, or they might be, it's like, oh wow, look what just popped in my living room for my TV dinner tonight.
That's it. And in the example A over here, the tide's moving from left to right on the screen, and you can see the fish are holding a little bit more tighter to this dock. Maybe that's because there's a lot more growth on the dock, or there's some oysters growing under the dock, or there's some bigger holes under the dock, and they really want to sit tighter to it. That's when I'm going to kind of be up current from them, so I can let my bait drift down, and I can work every piling, get tight and right to every piece of obstruction on that dock, and make sure I pick it apart. And I want this to float right into the fish's mouth and get a little more aggressive with it. You just kind of have to feel these docks out and see how these fish are positioning. A lot of times, if you get close enough to these docks and you're picking them apart, you can see the fish spooking away. That might mean back off a little bit. Yeah, the blowouts. You'll see the mud puffs or the sand puffs, kind of like a bonefish might do as he's moving along eating. You can kind of learn how you need to stay off of them with that. Just being very, very, very observing.
This is where the lure selection is going to be important too. Not that B is important as well, but they're more suspended probably they could be high in the water column or middle of the column on B, but on A, they're holding tight to the piling as like cover, structure, protection. The weight of the lure is going to be real important. Maybe they want to see it come flashing like immediately up from the bottom, bouncing up and then falling in front of their face, or maybe they want to see it a natural drift, just gently flowing like a bait, just flowing down the river with the current. My personal preference is to cast up current and let the bait come to them, but Stephen's absolutely right. I've caught numerous fish, and also it was easier for me to fish. I wasn't running the trolling motor as hard. We can power pole, but sometimes the water's a little deep. It's deeper than 10 foot, and if we moved inside where it's 6 foot or 8 foot of water and power pole down, we might be a little too close to the dock, not quite getting a long enough drift, letting the lure be in what I call the strike zone long enough for them to see it, to decide, do I want to eat this or not?
Yeah, definitely want to keep that lure in the strike zone as long as possible. That's going to give you a better chance of catching any fish. I don't care what you're doing, largemouth, redfish. All right, we're going to kind of get into some of the baits that we are personally using this week, targeting redfish here in Jacksonville, Florida. Spinner baits. I don't know yet, but this weekend I would have to think that 90% of our fish are probably going to come off spinner baits.
Oh
yeah. I like, and Jeff does too, to kind of custom make our own spinner baits.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know the first example to the left there, it's backwards, but I don't have the hook on there. But we like to tone it down and use that smaller spinner size. I personally like to get the H&H Redfish spinners, number 4 size. You can go a little bit smaller, but the number 4 size is the Redfish spinner they make. It's a little more beefed up, but it is small. So it's nice having that smaller presentation. Gold Colorado blade.
That's just one of my favorites.
That's the way we go. I like to use the Trout Eye jig head, which Z-Man sells, which has the 2-aught mustad black nickel hook, 3/16 ounce. That's the standard Trout Eye jig head. That works really great. Also, if I want to be a more weedless in my presentation, the Aqua Dream 1/8 ounce swim jig with the Hitchhiker That is a great hook, and it works excellent on the small spinner blade, as well as it comes on the Aqua Dream inline spinner as well.
Which would be to the right. The hitchhiker is the actual spring that we screw the bait on.
Yeah, holds it in place nicely. It's just a less aggressive presentation, toning down the size of our spinner baits. I've had a ton of success using these, and it's pretty much my go-to spinner bait with Redfish. As far as trailers go, you can see the Z-Man Curly Tails up there. That's a great little bait to go on the spinner bait. But you can also beef it up for a larger trailer as well. Soft plastic presentation, be more aggressive with it. The swimming Trout Trick works great. Your Paddler Z, which I know Jeff loves.
They're great.
And just
Incredible
your basic
bait.
little
great action with that paddle tail.
Paddle tail minnows work great on there.
But the Trout Trick, that baby's it's like it just suspends.
Yeah, it does great. Does great. And the natural buoyancy of the Z-Man Elastec technology they have really makes it great for a lot of different lure presentations. Of course, you're weighted down from the spoon of the blade on the spinner bait, the hook itself. So that Elastec technology is going to kind of help balance that out. It's not going to sink as fast, so you can effectively keep it in the strike zone and work all levels of the water column effectively. But again, this is I guarantee, going to be our go-to bait. It's been good to us over the past, especially on that incoming water when these fish, we have to do a lot of blind casting, working the edges of the oysters and the grass. It's going to be key.
Not getting hung up as much, or we might go weightless hooks.
Yeah.
To throw
hopefully
over.
Get us a couple reaction strikes.
Right.
Yeah, perfect 27-inch fish, 8 pounds, check in our pocket. That would be awesome. The Aqua Dream weedless spoon. I know Jeff doesn't throw this as much as me.
Hey, he's a machine with it.
I don't bust this out all the time. The Gulf Coast, this is a go-to, so I'm sure a lot of you can attest listening right now. But, man, have I pulled some Hail Marys.
In the last 5 minutes.
With this bait here.
Yes.
I mean, you can fish this, slowly. You can fish it more aggressively. You can really power fish with it, burn up some water, get some last-minute bites, or, first thing in the morning bites.
It's great over oysters, too.
Yeah. No matter what spoon I'm using, and I do use the Aqua Dream weedless, the ADL weedless spoons, 1/4 ounce. I like a little bit of the smaller profile. I don't use the big spoons too much, and that's more of a confidence thing. This is just what works for me. I attach a barrel swivel to all of my spoons, and that's going to reduce your line twist and improve the action of the spoon. You don't want the line twists. I'll also tie a loop knot to the barrel swivel as well. I'll get into some knots at the end that I use, but I do like the uni knot. That's kind of my do-all go-to knot. You can do anything. You can cinch it down. You can tie a loop knot with it. You can attach line to line, leader to braid, to your backing, whatever. I mean, it's the do-all knot. There's a lot of great color patterns out there. Of course, you got the root beer, the gold, which is your typical color pattern on these spoons. One I've gotten a lot of confidence in, especially low light conditions or first thing in the morning or last thing in the afternoon, is the black with the chartreuse on it. That's been a great color for me. And you have the more lifelike imitations as well, plated with a imprint of a mullet or a menhaden. Just a great go-to hard bait for me that I'll probably have tied on this weekend as well. Again, I'm gonna go back into the barrel swivel. That's key. And make sure it is a barrel swivel, not just your regular cheap old swivel. Make sure that sucker has some ball bearing in it. Spro makes a good one. That's usually what I use. They cost a little bit more, but they're quality and they will last. You don't want a cheap barrel swivel on there. And
well, when you think
turn me out into being a liar, because I'm not lying to you. Get the one with the ball bearings.
I mean, you think about it, you've invested your time on the water and equipment and gear to get you there. Watch it cheap out on a $4 swivel.
Yeah, we're fishermen. We're rich, and we got tons.
You're not rich,
tons of
money. I'm not, but I mean, come on, it's why instead of get a pack of $1.99,
do it right.
$4.99 for 4 or whatever. be successful and not have knots in your line. Not that we get that many knots or line twists nowadays with braided line, but if you're still throwing monofilament, it's definitely going to be key.
Get away from that monofilament. Get you some braid with a fluorocarbon leader.
Fluorocarbon has its purpose. It's a sink. It'll sink.
No, it will. Yeah.
I
just can't. I can't afford to put a whole spool of fluorocarbon.
Or I'm sorry, I had that backwards. Yeah.
But no, we get into some soft plastics now. I know the Z-Man Trout Trick. That's been a go-to lure for me for a couple of years now. Started out as a trout catching sensation, but it catches redfish too. I rig it on a Trout Trick jig head or whatever jig head you want that you feel comfortable with using. Weighted swim bait hook, usually a 4/0 1/8 ounce with this bait, or Texas rigged with a 1/4 ounce bullet weight. That's general. You can use 1/2 ounce, 1/8 ounce, 16, whatever the conditions call for, and a 4/0 flipping hook as well with that setup. And this is primarily for finesse fishing, sight fishing. I'm working this slowly, but you can also use this on the weighted swim bait hook as a jerk shad imitation as well.
Yes.
And the natural buoyancy of the Elastec material that Z-Man uses in their baits really does.
Oh yeah,
gives it some great action, stands it up, it evens out the weight of the jig head or hook you're using. Good presentation. I know I'm going to be flipping this, early in the morning, lower tide this weekend, probably on the Texas rig setup there. It's going to kind of stand up for me and kind of sit there and dance. I'm going to definitely be a little bit easier with them first thing in the morning. It's also going to be a great bait for flipping the bass in the grass in the afternoon.
Slack. Here we have so much current too when the tide's moving. You can put some slack. The bullet weight might be stuck down in the oyster. You can put a little slack in your line on that Elastec bait. Because when I first saw this bait, I was like, hey, what are you getting your action out of this bait, Steve? And he's like, just look at it in the water. It had the bullet weight was down. He didn't have it pegged. I mean, that's another option if you're fishing rocks and stuff. You can peg it. But to stay on track here, he cast it out about 10 feet or so from the boat and put a little slack in the line. He's like, watch it rise up. And the current was helping it rise up, and it was just suspended, maybe 6 inches off the bottom, 10 inches, whatever you wanted. And it was impressive to watch Stephen catch a lot of fish that day.
I go bass fishing with this lure. That's pretty much how I work it.
It's a great color around here too, by the way.
It is. The colors I'm showing you is kind of what I'm going to be using. Roundabout. That's the color that will be my go-to. Pretty much everything, again, we're telling you in this webinar is what we're doing and exactly what we're using for this tournament, and hopefully that helps. We got next Z-Man Easy Shrimps. It's the new shrimp design put out, and we're starting to get a lot of shrimp in our area in Charleston. I'm sure y'all have a few shrimp coming in here. It might not be the go-to because it is early in the season, but if a situation presents itself and I see some little rascals popping, little shrimp popping.
Oh yeah, you're gonna see
this sucker's going in the water. This can be a great bait, especially as the tide's going out or in around structures such as oysters or on the edge of the grass. That's when these fish can get aggressive after a little grass shrimp or shrimp getting pushed in.
You'll see the little baby grass shrimp getting pushed and flipping on the surface.
Doing a lot of finesse and sight fishing with this bait. Again, rigged on jig head or Texas rig to keep it weedless. Also on the same setup, the
popping cord,
weightless flipping hook with a bullet weight attached to it. Works great under a popping cork. I don't have that presentation set up on here. That might be a situation that works. That's something that I know I probably don't do enough in tournaments.
We both don't do enough.
I know a lot of guys have success, and we have been fishing near many guys that have whooped us on the popping cork. Now, don't get me wrong, we've whooped them using something else many a times too, but that popping cork has its purpose. It's just hard for me to wrap my head around using it sometimes in tournament situations with artificial, but it is very effective, especially around the grass and oysters.
I don't have any specific brand that I like to use, but I like to use the standard popping cork with about depending on the depth of the water, usually 2 foot, 3 foot, leader, weightless hook or weighted hook, depending on how far down you want it to get. And the popping action of that popping cork, those rattles, to me, if you ever listen to a shrimp in the water, it's like somebody snapping their fingers. You can hear them go click, 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 like a snap, snap. And I think those rattles on the top, you have 2 beads on top, 2 beads on the bottom, and every time you pop it, and let it set for a second and pop it. Either, in my eyes, my thinking is fish are like, where's that fish at feeding? And, they might see that chartreuse tail or whatever color you're using, and then get that reaction strike on it. And next thing you know, the cork is under.
Pop, stop, let it drop.
Pop, stop, and let it drop. That's right.
Z-Man paddlers, again, great trailer for a spinnerbait. Also on the trout eye jig head and the weighted swim bait hook. This is a bait you can really cover all the water column with. Smoky shad's the color I got up top there. That's kind of my go-to color. Great mullet imitation. We got a lot of mullet around right now, finger mullet. So this is a bait I'm going to be using as just a slow, steady reel, or speed it up just depending on what part of the water column I want to use and what presentation I want to use. Jerk shad motion, slow crawl with it, flipping in the grass. It's kind of a do-all, and I know we're going to be putting that into our arsenal as well. Mm-hmm. Always a go-to. Evidently, I got more spinner baits on here with the curly tails. You can rig that right up on the jig head as well. And it's just a little bit smaller presentation, but with a lot more action with that curly tail and that Elastec material. It really dances in the water. The flats jigs, here we go. I did bring a few of these. These can also be rigged as a trailer on your spinner baits if you want. I usually put this on there with a curly tail as well under it. Also a great flipping bait in the grass when that tide comes up this weekend. If you can't tell, I really think our key bites are going to come when that water starts coming in a little bit. I just have a feeling, good or bad. But there's many different presentations here. Cleaner water, I'd probably go more toward the smoky shad color down there, and the more stained water, heavy moving water, I'm going to go the more root beer solid presentation. It's going to give it a nice silhouette. Great bait. They usually, it's kind of like fishing a jig for bass.
It looks like a smallmouth catch and rig and Greenbrier
I'm sure
River.
the smallmouth guys are tearing it up on it. Pretty much what we're using as far as tackle, pretty simple, 3,000, 4,000 spinning reels, at least 7
You could go down to 2,500.
You can. Plenty of guys want to. It's what you have confidence in. There's a ton of guys that use 2,500s. I usually try to, be prepared for whatever. But with as lightweight as the reels are nowadays, it doesn't matter. The standard size for me is probably 3,000.
That's what I use.
Yeah.
3,000 to 4,000.
And, I use a lot of bait casters as well. Now, the thing with the braided line on these bait casters, I use at least 30-pound braid. That's going to keep your wind knot, your backlash. Not that we know anything about backlash.
Into the spool.
Yep, but anything with treble hooks, even spinnerbait spoons, I love using this. And I get a lot of control with these fish, getting them in and out of cover, using the bait caster as well.
I was going to say, do you have any time to talk about the speed, the 6-to-1, 7-to-1?
Yeah, you definitely want the good speed ratio there on your bait caster as well. You definitely want to be able to pick up a lot of line with those smaller diameter spool. Mm-hmm. You do want to be able to pick up more line. The rods, spinning rods, 7-foot, medium or medium heavy, fast tip, casting 7-foot, medium heavy, fast tip. I will dumb it down to a 6.5-foot on my casting rods. A lot of times depends what I'm using. But again, that's all preference. Braided fishing line, just depends on the size of spool I'm using. 15, 20, 30-pound test. Fluorocarbon, leader material, 20-pound, 30-pound test. The knots, and y'all can go to Net Knots if you want to learn more about these. That's just a great site that I found out about to find out some of these knots, and a lot of great videos on there as well. The double uni knot, that's going to be to tie my leader material to my braided fishing line. The improved clinch knot, that's kind of a do-all knot attaching to your bait. Mm-hmm. Again, my go-to is the uni knot most of the time. The non-slip loop knot, that's another way to tie the loop knot, and it is a great loop knot. It's not going to slip. That uni knot can slip a lot of times when you tie a loop knot with it, but you can readjust it. The snail knot, that's my go-to when I'm tying up those Texas rigs. When I'm tying I'm going straight braid, tying the snail knot to the weightless VMC flipping hook. Braid does very well tying that snail knot, and when it presses up against to that bullet weight, it really gets that hook in a nice hook setting position.
Or vertical straight up through the roof of the mouth.
Vertical straight up through the roof of the mouth when you set that hook, and it definitely improves your chances of getting them in and out of cover quickly and then getting the fish to the boat. We'll get into Q&A here. Again, I'm Captain Stephen Fields, Charleston Fishing Company, Fields Fishing. Definitely look for me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever other social media is out there that I hadn't heard of yet. You can find out more about webinars. Just go to navionics.com, join the mailing list. Also look under webinars for all the upcoming webinars, and you can view all webinars that were done. They are recorded and put it on their website, including this one. I don't just conduct these webinars myself. I watch a lot of them, from freshwater to whatever. I learn a lot. A lot of these guys have a lot of great information out there. My dad always said, once I stop learning, I need to quit. So
that's right.
I'm never going to stop learning. I always like learning new things, and appreciate you guys attending and participating in this. I always enjoy doing this.
You mind if I plug in a little something here?
Plug it in.
While you guys anybody's visiting Million Island, Fernandina Beach, we got a lot of great restaurants, and our local two local tackle stores here is actually three, I should say now. We have Leaders and Sinkers on North 14th Street, 1620 North 14th Street, next to the boat ramp there. Jimmy Johnson's at Million Island Bait and Tackle, and then Captain Terry Lacoste with the Million Angler. Outside of that, if you guys need something, another great family-owned tackle store in Jacksonville, Florida would be Strike Zone off of, I believe it's Atlantic. Yes, Atlantic. If it's not Atlantic, it's Beach Boulevard, but I'm pretty sure it's Atlantic. But those are local stores here, and thank you all for tuning in. Let's get to some Q&A, Steve.
Yeah, go ahead. Send us some of your questions if you have them, and we'll answer them to the best of our ability. Let's see what we got here. John from Bono, South Carolina. That's not far away from Charleston. All right, what suspending bait do you use most, and how best to work? When it comes to hard baits, I do like the Live Target scaled sardine or the rattle bait in the bait ball series, just because I can control my depth by the speed of my reel. Definitely if I'm searching or it's higher water and I'm blind casting a lot, those are kind of my go-to suspending baits. Spinner bait works good, and also that Z-Man paddlers jerk shad I was telling you about. On a weighted swim bait hook, that's a great suspending bait as well. And again, it just depends on the current movement and depth, how fast you're going to retrieve it, how aggressive you want to be with your retrieve, and how the fish are reacting to it, whether you need to be less aggressive or more aggressive.
As far as suspended baits,
yeah,
I like the Countdown. I mean, it's old school. Rapala has it out. I use that a lot. It's called the Countdown. It's gradually sinking, and they do have a suspending one now too. Also, soft plastics, rigged weightless hook works great for me. The Swimming Image.
Yep, that's
it's a floater diver technically, but
in all honesty, it's hard to beat.
It runs about a foot and a half of water, and
Bill Dance will tell you it works too. What's the best retrieve for a Mirrodine?
I don't really use a lot of Mirrodine lures, but what I think of imagination is when that lure is going through the water, I like to think of it as an injured bait fish. It's darting, it's moving around, it's going up, down, erratic, and I like to think of walking the dog beneath the surface of the water If it's Mirrodine, I believe I've used them in the past, but I don't use those regularly. I know it's a great lure. I've heard a lot of great things about them. It's just something I don't use a lot, but maybe in the future I could. But I think of walking the dog, but beneath the surface, if it's the diving one, the one that's sinking Mirrodine lure. I know they have different models.
Yeah, that's the good thing about Mirror and Mirrodine. They have a ton of different pitches, a ton of different weights on them and motions, and that's a big thing too. Changing different pitches up with your whether it be a top water or subsurface bait. It can make a difference. I forgot to throw that in there, and I appreciate you asking that question, George. How do you eliminate water to fish? It's simple. You didn't catch fish there.
You didn't see them.
It doesn't mean it that, it's kind of when you have a bunch of your pregame plan of where to go. It doesn't mean that spot's terrible all the time.
We'll look at our charts too, look at satellite imageries.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. When I did my research and picked out spots, it doesn't, if it's not on that day or that weekend, it doesn't mean it's not ever on. But there's been many things we've looked at already that we know have worked in the past, and for some reason this week it's just not on. And we're
covering new water,
overcoming adversity is what we're doing.
I mean, everybody is.
Yeah. But eliminating water is a big part of it. Everything's not going to be on all the time.
And I eliminate it by, sometimes I get on the push pole and just pole along the flats on different tide cycles, and I'm watching and learning. I've spent time on the water, helps me eliminate water that might not work today. But if I happen to start seeing some action or movement of fish in that area, I'll really drop back and really investigate that area a little bit harder. But if I'm not seeing fish, I'm moving on. I'm trying to find where the fish are holding. And usually if you're not seeing bait, you can pretty much guarantee you're not going to see a fish there.
Do you use side scan to check the docks before you fish them? It depends on the depth of the dock, and that is a great question. Side scan's not going to do me much good in a 1 foot or 2 foot of water, but a lot of these docks have plenty more water than that. And if you've got side scan, that is a great tool for you to use. You can pick up, these down skins and side scans pick up a lot of structure as well, and a lot of underwater structure that you might not know was around that dock before. But also you can get some glimpses of some of those fish as well that are sitting up and around the dock. Great question, and yes, I will use it when I can. Awesome. Absolutely. For bringing that up. Like I said, there's a lot of things that I've forgotten to mention, and you guys are bringing it to point. Do you have any experience with a Z-Man pop shads? Yes, I do. And again, that's another one. I didn't throw that in there. I don't know if I'm going to use a lot of that this weekend. I just don't know if that's going to be in our forte, but I do have some if I need to time on. But yes, it does work. It's a great soft plastic top water bait. I do use it a lot, especially with all the mullet we're having coming in now. And you want to be something different too, and it really does stand out. I'll use a lot of brighter colors when it comes to that. Really does stand out. Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, it works great as well. Appreciate you bringing that out. It's a great top water bait, not just for fresh water, but for salt water. Leslie Morgan, good to see you. Good to see you.
I don't use trailer hooks. Basically, if you're using a trailer hook, what I've found over the years of fishing, and maybe your bait's a little bit too big, is why you're getting the short strikes. Maybe you need to downsize in the size of the bait you're using, or maybe even upsize a little bit. Maybe they're, in the fall when the fish are ambushing bait, gorging themselves, trying to get full. What I find is they might want a bigger bait to get, or even in the winter months, hey, if I'm going to exert this much energy to eat, I want a bigger bait. But, Stephen does more bass fishing. And I know a lot of bass fishermen like to have trailer hooks. Certain areas you got to watch on your regulations. Certain areas you might not allow to have tandem hooks in certain parts of different states. But usually what I found over the years, I need to downsize my line if I'm not getting the strike. If the fish isn't really eating, just wanting to eat that bait, I'm just getting little nips. And I've seen it in bass fishing, and it's usually the size of the bait. I need to go up or down the size, usually down.
Yeah,
smaller size?
usually I don't use trailer hooks, Leslie. And I'm not saying
Great
it doesn't
question.
work. I guarantee you some people do. And if it works, let me know. Send me an email. I might start trying it. But like Jeff, I downsize a lot of stuff on my spinner baits. It's just what I'm comfortable with, what I've become accustomed to. Just like me downsizing my spinner blade and the spinner setup. I keep it kind of compact.
Something we do in fly fishing, to speak on the trailer hook, basically what we're dying on is just a simple uni knot with a little bit of leader, maybe not even a ½ inch long, if say I've got on a lot of our spinner baits, we put a trailer on there, meaning we're using a soft plastic. You got the spinner bait blade, the soft plastic, and then if I wanted a stinger hook, I might extend it out with another hook, or you could put the trailer hook in that application.
All right. Thank you, Leslie. Now, I look forward to seeing you again on the water. I know you're going to be booking me sometime soon. Great fisherman there, guys. Leslie Morgan for you. Paul Nowotny asks, where is the tournament out of this weekend? Well, if you're a Jacksonville guy, you'll know where Sisters Creek is. Sisters Creek boat ramp in Jacksonville. So if you have some time Saturday, that'd be great if you could come out, man.
Weigh in. I haven't looked. It's usually around 3:30.
Yeah.
They'll start weighing in. I'm having a feeling our takeoff will probably be around 7:15. We're starting to get a little bit of safe flight. I believe today I had a trip the day before I was trying to start I started at 7 a.m., but it was still a little bit dark. It definitely wasn't safe flight, but look forward to come on out or sign up.
Yep.
Let's fish the tournament.
First time in a new area, what lure is your go-to and why? Man, it'd have to be probably the spoon or spinner bait. And that's just because I'm probably going to be covering a lot of water. And it's something I can power fish with and cover the most water in a limited amount of time. It'll get you some reaction strikes. You might miss some strikes, but you're going to kind of find out where the fish are. There's going to be an aggressive fish in there somewhere. If you're fishing the low country of South Carolina for the first time, what type of locations and structure would you focus your efforts on? And what? We have a ton of oysters, so that's great structure for fish in the South Carolina low country area. Definitely oysters, feeder creeks feeding these flats, these oyster flats, your deeper holes in your creeks, the creeks that are going to hold water at all tides. A lot of these fish, that's going to be their highway. We have a lot of great docks in the low country as well. Definitely key in on those docks and those differences on those docks. Those are usually go-tos.
Anonymous viewer, I would suggest putting some more weight. I mean, if you're casting under a dock and a 10-foot dock or 10-foot depth, and you find that your cast, the soft plastic, the current is swift and my bait is moved through and past the dock before it can reach the bottom, definitely add more weight. Get it up under the dock or a little farther cast, or you can. That's where you could also stage up above the current, and instead of casting, just drop it out. Just start letting 2 foot off the front of the boat, and start letting it gradually go down underneath the dock. But usually, if that's happening, you need to add more weight, a heavier jig head or a bullet weight, depending on how you're rigging that setup.
And what are your favorite flies for various conditions? That's the fly man right there.
I love one of my favorites, John Baker. He lives in St. Augustine. John is a great fly tyer, and a lot of the flies that I tie are tandem flies, articulated. They're actually fairly long, and they work great in various colors, from root beer, dark water, light or dark baits, light water, light baits. I'm using a lot of sinking, really heavy flies that sink. They look heavy, they're kind of bulky, but Google John Baker flies, or stop in at Black Fly Outfitters. He does some ties, and he also does some custom ties. Or send Stephen an email and with your telephone number, and I'll give you a call and get you squared away on some good flies.
All right, Clint asks, what is more important fishing docks, depth, structure, or current? I'll start with depth. Again, you want the docks that is going to hold water at all tides. That's where your fish are going to primarily concentrate on and stay at. They're not going to be on a dock they can't sit on, you know. Structure, you're definitely going to want a dock with more growth on it. Your older, more established docks, and or current. Current movement is key. You definitely want too much current, you know, can be tough. But you know, all three of them are equally as important. All three of them are going to equal success. Do you ever use drop shot rigs? I have. I actually got a bass fishing client out of, for my charters anyways, out of Virginia, a good client of mine. And he sent me an email the other day wanting to drop shot a good bit this summer. And I have in the past. You know, I use a lot of bass tackle, is what, you know, Jeff does too, to target these redfish. So yes, it can be effective. I'm just a little bit lighter.
Umbrella rig, wasn't it?
No.
It's
Never mind. We'll leave him out of that question. I'll actually dumb down my weight and presentation on my drop shot rigs compared to bass fishing, though. But good question. Do you think a forward casting platform helps or hurts? It helps. Oh, man. Seeing is believing.
Absolutely.
You can see so much more with a casting platform.
And the higher.
Very few times do I not have a casting platform.
The only thing that's going to hurt is if you fall off of it. So
secure it. Yes.
Secure it to the boat properly, and also get a railing around it or a leaning rail if you have some balance issues.
Safety first. Great question, though. But yes, forward casting platforms are great. You know, there's if I didn't have one on in certain situations, including this weekend, if we didn't have a casting platform, there are many of fish we would not see and be able to sight fish with that thing. Or there's many of subtle movements in the water column or bait we might not see because of that. It makes a huge difference whether it's a 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, or 4 foot casting platform.
If you get one for your buddy that stands in the front running the trolling motor, it's even better. So you've got one guy higher than the next guy or girl. Trussville, Alabama.
All right, guys. Well, that's about all the time I have for tonight. My email is sfields@navionics.com. It should be in the confirmation email you got. If you have any questions or anything like that, feel free to send them to me. I definitely enjoyed having everybody on and speaking with everyone and having Jeff here.
Thank y'all.
Wish us luck this weekend. It was fun doing
all the other anglers. Good luck.
Dock talking with you guys, and I hope y'all all check out the rest of the webinars and our my future webinars that are scheduled and tune in for those. Appreciate it. Definitely, Paul Nowotny. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. You said you were 6'7", so I don't want to pronounce that wrong, but we'll see you at weigh-in. Definitely track me down. We'll have I'll be in the Navionics jersey with Blue Wave Suzuki repping on there as well. Definitely give us a shout out, and I look forward to speaking with you. But I hope you guys take care, and I thank you for attending.